Welcome to Why Follow the Herd. I'm your host, Debbie Clement-Large. I'm sure you have heard the term, don't sweat the small stuff. Yet we all do it. And that is what today's show is all about, sweating the small stuff and how we can let that go. It can be really easy to get caught up in sweating the small stuff, getting caught up in things which really don't always matter. Yet our perception can get in the way. We can believe something is really important and we can get all uptight and we can use so much mental energy behind it that we tire ourselves out. We keep ourselves awake at night. We can trigger all sorts of different emotions within us. We can become ratty and irritable with other people. We'll want to go off and take action or to show somebody something, to rebel against something. There are so many different ways that we can respond to a situation like that. So let me share a story of something that's happened with me recently. So my next door neighbour's having some work done and she was having some guttering and the fascias and soffits and they're all replaced. And the scaffolders turned up and they put some scaffolding out the front, they put scaffolding out the back. And it was a little while later, not even that same day, but a little bit later, that I realised they'd actually put scaffolding up in our garden. My garden, that they'd gone over the fence and put, not a massive amount, but put a whole level of scaffolding up without asking, without approval. They've got no right to do that. So my immediate response went into irritation. I went into being, how dare they? So I spoke to one of the contractors and he blamed the scaffolders, which was somebody that he brought in. So I thought, actually, I'm going to ring up, and I started sweating the small stuff. I thought, I'm going to ring up the scaffolders and just say, and make a complaint and just say, actually, you're not allowed to do that. You could have at least had the respect and the decency to ask. So I rang the contractors and I spoke to him, the scaffolder, and he couldn't see there was a problem. He couldn't see that there was a problem with them putting scaffolding anywhere they wanted. That's fine. It's a bit of waste bit of your garden. Doesn't really matter. But actually they've put it right over where my main drain is. So if I'd had any drain blockage issues, which, you know, occasionally things happen, and I'd had to have a plumber out, they wouldn't have been able to get to that access point because the scaffolding was all there. And of course, you know, the scaffolders didn't necessarily know that. I could have been experiencing a problem and wanted to get somebody out. So I could feel myself getting really irritated. I became more irritated because he gave a bit of a wet apology. You know, it wasn't really heartfelt. It wasn't meant. It was just casual, but I don't see the problem. And that, it kept me awake that night. It kept me awake. I couldn't switch my mind off. I kept chewing on it. What do? Do I just let it go? Do I take further action? I could get lawyers involved and just send them a letter of complaint. But I was starting to sweat the small stuff. So yes, they were in my garden. They're not allowed to be. Have they caused any damage? Not yet. Is it still there? Yes. It's been there about 3 weeks now. Is it going soon? Yes. Okay. As long as they don't make any damage when they take the stuff away. I don't have any problems with my drainage at the moment, so I don't need to get to that section of my drains. Could I get lawyers involved? Yeah, absolutely. I could get my lawyer to send a letter. Do I want that hassle? Now there's where I stop and ask myself, am I sweating the small stuff? In the big scheme of things, does it really matter? Is it hurting? Well, it's not really hurting. It hurt my self-respect, I guess, to a degree. I didn't like it because I wasn't asked. I didn't like it because he didn't seem to respect my opinion that you can't just put stuff in people's gardens without asking them. But that is my perspective. So it was really interesting to see how my perspective on how you should treat somebody was different to his perspective. His perspective was, well, you could just put scaffolding anywhere. If it looked like an edge of a garden, it didn't really matter. Whereas my perspective is, that's my boundary and you've just crossed it. So we all have different boundaries, not only physical boundaries like a fence or a wall, but we have emotional boundaries. We have boundaries that we don't expect people to cross. So my boundary was, I didn't expect people to not only physically go over the boundary, but I didn't expect them to go over a boundary of respect. So in my mind, that was really important. But to him, his perspective was completely different. He didn't see there was a problem with that. So it makes us think, what do I want to do? Do I want to take it and make a big issue out of it? Or do I want to let it go? There's a really great saying that says, do I want to be right? Or do I want to be happy? And sometimes we do want to be right. We want to prove a point. And that's where my mind was going originally. I wanted to prove a point. Let's get hold of my solicitor and get them to send a letter. But would it have made me feel peaceful? Probably not. It probably could have been the start of a whole catalyst of things. Do I want to be right? Yeah, there's an element of me that does want to be right. But then when I stop and think, what is right? My perception of right was that he shouldn't be there. His perception of right was that he had every right to be. So is it worth creating more mental anguish? Is it worth creating more sleepless nights? Is it worth creating more negative inner talk? Is it worth investigating and triggering responses in me? Or do I just want to forgive and find peace? Now, there are different boundaries that we will allow things to happen where we think, actually, this is really worth fighting for this. This is really worth standing up for myself and doing this. And when you feel really strongly, or it is something that is dangerous, something that is really important, then it's worth taking a stand. But sometimes we've got to pick our fights. We've got to think, do I want to be right? Or do I want to be happy? And in this instance, it would have been easy for me to prove that I was right. But I could have created a lot more anguish for myself in doing that. So I chose to forgive and to let it go. And sometimes that is the best course of action, is to let it go. And as soon as I made that decision, as soon as I stopped telling myself this story that he was in the wrong and I was in the right, because it's just a story. And then my story would keep fueling that. Look at the disrespect, look at what they're not doing, look what's happening. And I just kept making the story bigger and bigger and bigger. And I found it difficult to let go at first. And then I journaled on it. I contemplated and meditated on it. And I made a decision to let it go. So what's showing up for you at the moment? Is there any element of disharmony where you're thinking about proving a point, making itself right, doing something for the sake of doing it, where maybe somebody has crossed your boundaries? But stop and think, is it something really worth pursuing? Is it something really making an issue out of? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? For me, in this instance, it was choosing happy. And there's no right and wrong, there's no good and bad, but sometimes it's just worth stepping back and thinking about what the issue is, what you want to do, allowing somebody else's perception to be different to mine, and applying forgiveness and compassion. So I'd love to hear anything with you that is going on that you maybe might think like you've been sweating the small stuff, and how you can let that go, and whether it's worth letting it go. As I said, there's no right and wrong, there's always choice. But just sometimes as soon as we surrender, and to me, I surrendered to that because really it wasn't worth my mental energy. I wasn't causing any anger or irritation with him. I was feeling it within me. The scaffolder didn't care that his scaffolding was there. I cared. I was creating all that energy. I was creating all that upset. I was the one feeling that upset. I was the one that was creating my own suffering. As soon as I let that go, I felt so much more, a wonderful flow of inner peace. I slept better the next night. I feel better now. I've let go. Yeah, okay, it's not right, and I could pursue it if I wanted to, but I'm in this instant choosing that this isn't worth fighting for. I didn't want to sweat the small stuff. If he creates any damage, then of course I will, but not in this instance. So sometimes it is really freeing to let go of the small stuff. It is really freeing to let go in our minds, the stories that we tell, the need to be right and wrong, and the understanding that we don't always have the same perception. I hope that can enlighten you with something today, help you to think about a situation that maybe is going on for you at this moment, where you can be open to seeing things in a different way, or letting go of your own suffering that maybe you're creating because of that situation. Come back to that thought. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Sometimes choosing happiness is the best route to take. I'd love for you to like this, to share it, love to comment on it, and subscribe as well. It's so that you get the notifications. It's great being part of this journey with you. Thank you for your time today. It has been lovely as always, and I look forward to sharing with you again next week. If you want to find out any more about me, you can check out whyfollowtheherd.com. If you'd like to be part of some conscious conversations, they may be even around sweating the small stuff and letting it go. I have conscious conversations with friends every month, the last Wednesday of the month. You can sign up for those on my website, and they are free to attend, and they are about being consciously aware of who you are, what choices we make, and being inspired by other people's stories to open up, to understand our own perspectives, to either choose to stay as we are or to choose to think something different. There's no right and wrong, but it's good to be open and receptive to new ideas and new ways of seeing things. I look forward to sharing a new insight with you soon. So remember, stay true to you and don't follow the herd. I'll see you next week. Take care.